Richard Harrington posted the sign as a cruel joke. $1 million to anyone who can make me feel again. The cleaning woman who couldn't read English simply moved it aside each morning to dust his desk. 3 months later, he would wire her the money. Not because she tried to claim it, but because she was the only person who never knew it existed. The 42nd floor of the Harrington Tower stayed lit all night. Not for business.
You can't just leave.
Richard Harrington,
I have to.
worth $3.7 billion,
I have to.
hadn't slept properly in 3 years.
Sarah,
Not since the afternoon
I
he
never
chose a
thought I'd see
conference
this
call
place
over
bustling
swimming with his
again.
son. Not since
It took a lot of
six-year-old
work,
Tommy's voice
but
went quiet
we
in
made
the
it.
backyard pool. The security footage showed everything. Tommy calling for Daddy. The nanny inside making lunch. Richard in his home office, door closed, arguing about market shares while his son's lungs filled with chlorinated water. 17 minutes. That's how long the call lasted. That's how long Tommy waited for someone to notice. The silence afterward was different from any silence Richard had known. Not peaceful, not empty, but full of absence. Full of the sound of Tommy's feet running down hallways that would never echo again. Full of questions about dinosaurs that would never be asked. Full of bedtime stories that would never be requested. Richard had tried to fill that silence with work, with alcohol, with expensive therapies that promised to unlock his frozen grief. Nothing worked. He became a ghost haunting his own life. Amara Johnson entered his office at midnight, as she had for the past month. She moved like a shadow, which suited them both. He pretended not to notice the young black woman who cleaned around him. She pretended not to notice that the richest man in the building was dying inside. Her cleaning cart squeaked on the marble floor. She hummed something low and melodic. A spiritual from her grandmother's church in Mississippi, though he wouldn't know that. Wouldn't care if he did. The tune was older than both their griefs, passed down through generations of women who knew that sometimes the only response to sorrow was song. I said no humming, Richard snapped without looking up from his screens. The stock market never slept, neither did guilt. The numbers blurred together, but he stared at them anyway. Anything to avoid seeing Tommy's face in the black mirror of his monitor. Amara paused, understanding his tone if not his reasoning. She'd been in America all her life, but she'd learned early to speak only when necessary in spaces like these. Keep quiet, stay invisible, get paid. The rules her mother had taught her when she started cleaning offices at 14. My apologies, she whispered, but the humming continued under her breath, quieter now, defiant in its gentleness. She had learned from her grandmother that some songs couldn't be silenced. They lived in the bones, in the blood, in the spaces between heartbeats. Her grandmother had hummed while sharecropping tobacco. Her mother had hummed while scrubbing floors at 3 different jobs. Amara hummed while cleaning the offices of men who would never know her name. Richard watched her from the corner of his eye. At 35, she moved with the efficiency of someone who'd been working since childhood. Each book returned to its exact spot, each paper aligned with care. She cleaned the photo of Tommy with special attention, using the corner of her shirt when the cleaning cloth seemed too rough. He wanted to scream at her. Don't touch that. Don't look at him. Don't make me remember he was real. Don't make me remember his hands were so small they could barely hold a baseball. Don't make me remember he couldn't sleep without his stuffed elephant. Instead, he pointed to the sign on his wall. Can you even read that? $1 million. Cash. To anyone who can make me feel something. Anything. He laughed, bitter as burned coffee. Doctors, therapists, spiritual healers. Even tried a shaman last month. Nothing. I'm dead inside, and $1 million can't fix it. The words tasted like ash. He'd said them so many times they'd lost meaning, just sounds. Just noise to fill the silence where Tommy's laughter used to live. Amara tilted her head, studying him. She could read perfectly well, had been accepted to medical school before her father's cancer drained their savings. But she'd learned that men like Richard preferred their assumptions unchallenged. She understood his pain, though. The same emptiness had consumed her after burying her younger brother Marcus. 17 years old, full scholarship to Howard, shot by police who thought his phone was a gun. She knew the language of loss. It needed no translation. She pointed to the framed photo on his desk. The boy was beautiful, light hair like corn silk, eyes like the summer sky. His smile showed a missing front tooth. In the photo, he held a melting ice cream cone, more of it on his shirt than in his mouth. Joy radiated from every pixel. Amara had seen that kind of joy before, pure, uncomplicated. The kind that only existed before the world taught you to be afraid. "Your son?" she asked softly. Richard's jaw tightened. People had stopped mentioning Tommy 2 years ago. His ex-wife, his colleagues, even his own mother. As if collective amnesia could heal what time couldn't. As if pretending Tommy never existed was somehow kinder than acknowledging he was gone. But this cleaning woman, this stranger, looked at the photo with recognition. One grieving soul seeing another across the valley of loss. For the next week, Amara cleaned in wider circles around Richard. She noticed things. How he never ate, only drank coffee. Black, no sugar. Punishment disguised as preference. How he flinched when anyone laughed in the hallway. How he kept Tommy's toy car in his desk drawer, taking it out when he thought no one was watching. A red Ferrari. Tommy had been obsessed with fast cars, wanted to be a race car driver, or a dinosaur hunter, or a chef. 6 years old, and the whole world waiting. She began leaving small things on his desk. A flower from the lobby arrangement, always yellow, like sunshine, like hope, like the sunflowers in her grandmother's garden. A piece of candy from the break room, the peppermints her brother Marcus loved. A paper crane she folded from recycled documents. Each one a tiny rebellion against the sterile emptiness of his office. Against the way he'd stripped his life of anything soft, anything beautiful, anything that might remind him hearts could break. "Stop leaving trash on my desk," he said one night, sweeping the offerings into the garbage. But his hands were gentle with the paper crane. He noticed that. Since when did he notice his own hands? But the next evening, when she left an orange, perfectly peeled and segmented, he stared at it for an hour. The fruit reminded him of something. Tommy's sticky fingers after snack time. The way joy used to taste. Summer picnics when Lisa was still his wife and not a stranger who couldn't look at him without crying. He ate one segment. Tasted nothing. The doctors called it anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. Food was ash. Music was noise. Sunsets were just light pollution. But he ate it anyway, because the cleaning woman had taken time to remove every white thread, because her brown fingers had separated each piece with surgical precision, because somewhere in Mississippi she'd probably done the same thing for her brother. The universality of the gesture broke something loose in his chest. Amara watched from the doorway as he forced down the orange. She recognized the mechanical chewing of someone who'd forgotten why humans eat, the same way she ate after Marcus died. After the officers were cleared of wrongdoing, after the protests ended and everyone moved on except the family left behind, she'd chewed food like cardboard for months, staying alive only because her mother needed her. This broken man had no one. No reason to keep chewing, no one depending on him to survive another day. She thought of her mother, probably asleep now in the small apartment they shared in Brooklyn. Her mother, who still set a place for Marcus at dinner, who still bought his favorite cereal, who aged 10 years and 10 months. Her mother, who worked as a home health aide, caring for other people's parents because she couldn't afford to retire. Her mother, who prayed every night for justice that would never come. The next night, she brought soul food in a small container. Real food, the kind her grandmother taught her to make. Food that carried history in every bite. The greens had simmered for hours with smoked turkey her cousin sent from Georgia. The cornbread was made from scratch, yellow as sunshine, sweet as forgiveness. She'd added hot sauce her grandmother made, aged in mason jars, powerful enough to wake the dead. Food made with intention, with love, even if the recipient was a stranger. She placed it where the orange had been, still warm. The smell filled the sterile office. Collard greens and cornbread, comfort and home. Things Richard had never known existed. He looked at it with suspicion. "What is this?" "I don't pay you to feed me." His voice was sharp, but his eyes betrayed him. Hungry. Not for food, but for what it represented. For someone caring enough to cook. For the possibility that nourishment was still possible. But she was already across the room, wiping windows, humming louder now, wade in the water. The sound pulled at something in his chest. A memory of his housekeeper singing while she worked. Of Tommy asking what the words meant. Of explaining about the Underground Railroad, about codes and freedom and hope disguised as song. Of Tommy saying he wanted to help people escape sad things too. He took a bite to spite her. To prove food meant nothing, but the complexity surprised him. Salt, smoke, something green and alive. Flavors so honest they slipped past his defenses. He found himself eating slowly, matching the rhythm of her humming. When he finished, she was there with a paper napkin. Their eyes met. Hers were dark brown, almost black, with depths that spoke of old pain transformed into something else. The kind of eyes that had cried enough tears to recognize them in others. "Your baby," she said suddenly, pointing to Tommy's photo. He was beautiful. Richard's throat closed. The past tense hit like a physical blow. Was, not is, was. She understood the grammar of grief. My brother Marcus was beautiful too. 17. Full scholarship to Howard, wanted to be a doctor, help people. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands shook slightly. Police thought his phone was a gun. 3 seconds. That's how long they gave him to comply. 3 seconds. Something cracked in Richard's chest. This cleaning woman, this stranger, sharing her tragedy so simply. No drama, no seeking sympathy, just fact, just truth. Just the recognition that some losses created a terrible kinship. Don't, he said. But the word had no force behind it. Amara continued. I know what it's like, when food tastes like nothing. When sunshine feels cold. When you forget why breathing matters. She looked directly at him. But I also know it changes, not better. Different. The pain becomes companion instead of enemy. Why? Richard asked. Why does it change? The question surprised him. He hadn't asked a real question in years, only demanded, ordered, commanded. But this was different. This was one human asking another, how do you survive the unsurvivable? Amara smiled, sad but real. Because the dead don't want us dead. Marcus visits me in dreams, tells me to finish medical school, tells me Mama needs me, tells me his death can't be my death too. She moved her hands as she spoke, painting pictures in the air. Your boy, he loved you. Love like that doesn't die. It just changes form, becomes the voice that says eat something, take a shower, look at the sunrise, try again. Richard felt something shift inside him. This woman worked 3 jobs, cleaned toilets at midnight, gave up her dreams to support her mother. Her brother would never graduate, never become a doctor, never save lives, and yet she spoke of love persisting, of the dead caring for the living, of reasons to continue. The cognitive dissonance made him dizzy. How could hope exist alongside grief? How could purpose survive such losses? For 3 weeks, their midnight routine evolved. Amara brought food, different each night but always from her grandmother's recipes. Mac and cheese that was more than pasta and dairy, it was comfort made edible. Sweet potato pie that carried generations of survival in its filling. Fried chicken that somehow tasted like Sunday mornings and safety. Richard ate mechanically at first. Then, with growing awareness, he began to taste again, not just flavor but history, memory, connection. She cleaned differently too, still thorough but with new purpose. She moved his chair slightly, forcing him to face the window where dawn would eventually come. She left the blinds open just enough for streetlight to create patterns on his desk, reminders that light existed, even in darkness. She changed his harsh fluorescent bulbs for warmer ones, claiming the old ones hurt her eyes. The office became less tomb, more sanctuary. They talked. Or rather, she talked and he listened. Her voice was different when she forgot to be careful. Rich with education she pretended not to have. She told him about Mississippi, her grandmother's house with its wraparound porch, the church where 4 generations had been baptized, the cemetery where her people rested, names going back to slavery times, the resilience that was birthright and burden both. She told him about Marcus, how he'd taught himself calculus from library books, how he tutored kids in the neighborhood for free, how he'd planned to specialize in pediatric oncology because children deserved doctors who looked like them, how he'd been walking home from SAT prep, how the officers said he matched a description, how his last words were, "I'm just going home," how she held his hand in the hospital while he died, whispering that she'd become the doctor he couldn't be. Richard found himself sharing too. Words pulled from deep storage. Tommy's first word, Dada, clear as a bell at 10 months. His first day of school, insisting on wearing his Batman costume. The way he gave names to every stuffed animal, every toy car, even individual Legos. How he asked if dreams were movies God made. How Richard had said maybe, not knowing it would be one of their last conversations. How he wished he'd said yes, absolutely yes. One night, she didn't come. Richard waited until 12:30, 1 o'clock. By 2, he was pacing. By 3, he was in the security office, demanding to know where Amara Johnson was. The guard shrugged. Called in sick, I think. These people, they don't always show up. These people. The words ignited something in Richard. When had she become these people? When had he stopped seeing her as just another function, like electricity or running water? He pulled up employee records. Amara Johnson. Address in Brooklyn. 3 different job sites. Emergency contact. Delia Johnson, relationship, mother. He stared at the screen. She'd been cleaning his office for 2 months, and he knew nothing real about her, which train she took, how long her commute was, whether she felt safe traveling at night, whether anyone waited up for her, whether anyone would notice if she didn't come home. The next night she returned, moving slower. Her left eye was swollen shut. Purple bruises bloomed across her cheekbone like violent flowers. Richard stood up so fast his chair rolled backward, hitting the wall. What happened? She waved him away. Nothing. I fell. But he recognized violence. The precise pattern of knuckles against flesh. The way she held her ribs suggested more bruises hidden beneath her uniform. Who did this? His voice surprised him. Angry, protective, feeling. The emotion was foreign and familiar both, like speaking a language he'd once known fluently. She tried to move past him, but he stepped into her path. Not threatening, pleading. Amara, please. Who hurt you? The use of her name stopped her. He'd never said it before, hadn't even been sure he knew it. Under his stare, she crumbled. My mother's building, the stairs, some kids trying to rob people. I fought back. She touched her face gingerly. Stupid. Should have just given them my phone. But it has videos of Marcus, only copies I have. I couldn't. Her voice broke. I couldn't lose him again. Richard felt rage surge through him. Clean and hot and real. The first pure emotion in 3 years. I'll have security escort you, bodyguards. But Amara shook her head. That's not how it works in my world. You show up with bodyguards, you become a target. Your protection leaves, but the resentment stays. She said it matter-of-factly, like violence was weather. Something to be endured, not prevented. Then what? He demanded. What fixes it? She looked at him with those ancient eyes and that young face. Same thing that fixes everything. Time, community, people looking out for each other. My neighbor's grandson, Malik, he's walking me now. 16 years old, thinks he's my protector. She almost smiled. Marcus's age when he decided no one would ever hurt me. Funny how boys think they can guard against the world. Her words hit Richard unexpectedly. Tommy had been the same. 6 years old, declaring he'd protect Daddy from bad guys, from monsters, from sadness, as if love could be armor, as if determination could defeat death. Tommy said he'd protect me too, Richard heard himself say. Made me a card. Best daddy, best protector. Misspelled protector. Protektr. The memory came with surprising sweetness instead of the usual savage pain. That night, Amara cleaned one-handed, favoring her injured side. Richard found himself helping, the billionaire CEO carrying trash bags, wiping down surfaces, moving chairs so she wouldn't have to bend. They worked in companionable silence, 2 people who'd learned that sometimes words were unnecessary, that presence could be its own language, that grief shared was somehow grief diluted. When they finished, Richard opened his desk drawer, pulled out an envelope he'd been carrying for 3 years. Inside, photographs he couldn't bear to look at but couldn't bear to leave. Tommy on his first birthday, face covered in cake. Tommy and Richard at the beach, building sandcastles. Tommy asleep in Richard's arms, so small, so trusting, so alive. He spread them on the desk like tarot cards, each one telling a future that would never be. Amara sat across from him, studied each photo with the attention of someone who understood their weight. He has your eyes, she said finally. Same intensity, same way of really seeing. She pulled out her own phone, showed him Marcus. Graduation from middle school, first day of high school. Last Christmas, wearing a Howard University sweatshirt he'd bought with money saved from tutoring. He had my smile, she said. Same one-sided dimple, same way of laughing with his whole body. They sat there until dawn, sharing stories. Tommy's dinosaur phase, Marcus's astronomy obsession, first words, last words, dreams fulfilled and dreams destroyed. The peculiar torture of remembering, the peculiar comfort of being remembered. Two strangers becoming something else through the alchemy of shared loss. The sunrise painted the office gold, and for the first time in 3 years, Richard didn't flinch from its beauty. The sign, Amara said, pointing to his $1 million offer. You should take it down. It's cruel to yourself. Richard looked at it, really looked. Saw it for what it was, a mockery of his own pain. A dare to the universe that had already taken everything. What if I told you it was real? He asked. What if I really would pay $1 million to feel again? She laughed, short and sharp. Then I'd say you were looking in the wrong places. Feeling isn't something you buy, it's something you allow. And it hurts. God, it hurts. But it's better than the alternative. She gestured at the office, the empire built on emptiness. This isn't living, it's just elaborate dying. The truth of it hit Richard like cold water. She was right. He'd been committing slow suicide by spreadsheet. Death by 1,000 meetings. I don't know how to stop, he admitted. I don't know how to be anything but this anymore. The admission cost him. Men like Richard Harrington didn't admit weakness, didn't acknowledge limitation, didn't ask for help. Start small, Amara said. Eat breakfast, take a walk, call your ex-wife, visit Tommy's grave. She saw him flinch at the last suggestion. I know. I couldn't visit Marcus for 6 months, but when I finally went, I realized he wasn't there. He was in the kids he tutored, in the books he loved, in the way I see the world, because he taught me to look closer. The grave is just punctuation, not the whole story. Richard made a decision, pulled out his phone. 3 taps. What did you just do? Amara asked, suddenly wary. Paid off your mother's medical bills. Set up a college fund for you to finish medical school. Arranged for a car service for your commute. He said it casually, like ordering coffee. Like he hadn't just changed 2 lives with pocket change. Amara stared at him, then laughed, then cried, then got angry. Number absolutely not. I don't want your money. I'm not a charity case. I'm not, Richard held up his hand. It's not charity, it's justice. You've been saving my life every night for 2 months. The least I can do is give yours back. He paused. Besides, Marcus wanted you to be a doctor. Are you going to let him down? It was a low blow, and they both knew it. But effective. Amara's shoulders sagged. I can't take $1 million. It's insane. Richard nodded. Fine, then work for it. Be my assistant. Day shift, full benefits. Salary that happens to be enough for medical school. Help me build the foundation I should have started 3 years ago, for water safety, for police reform, for all the things that steal children. You're serious, she said. Not a question. Dead serious, he replied, then caught himself. Poor choice of words. Very serious. I need someone who understands, who won't let me disappear into work again, who'll make me eat and sleep and remember I'm human. Someone who sees Richard, not just Harrington. I need to think about it, Amara said, but her eyes said yes, hope flickering despite everything, despite Marcus, despite violence. Despite the long odds against girls from her neighborhood becoming doctors, my mother will think I've lost my mind, leaving steady cleaning jobs for some crazy white man's guilty conscience. Probably, Richard agreed, but you'll be Dr. Johnson one day, and somewhere Marcus will be proud. It was manipulative. It was true. It was the first real conversation Richard had had in 3 years. The first time words meant what they were supposed to mean. The first time he'd thought about a future that wasn't just enduring the present. The lawyers took 3 days to structure everything properly. The board took 3 minutes to approve. Who questioned Richard Harrington? Who challenged his choices? The man who'd built an empire on ruthlessness. Who'd become even more dangerous after loss because he had nothing left to lose. If he wanted to hire a cleaning woman as executive assistant, if he wanted to pay for her medical school, if he wanted to burn millions on foundations for dead children, who would stop him? Amara's first day on the day shift, she wore scrubs. Most comfortable thing I own, she explained, but Richard understood. Identity shifts slowly. She couldn't go from cleaning woman to executive overnight. The scrubs were compromise. Professional but practical. Acknowledging change while honoring history. Richard met her at the elevator. Wore jeans instead of his suit. Thought we'd start easy. Coffee, real food, figuring out how to make this office less like a mausoleum. She nodded. Together, they transformed the space. Plants appeared, tough ones that could survive neglect. Photographs went up, not just Tommy but Marcus too. Other children lost too soon. Reminders of why the work mattered. She insisted on keeping some cleaning supplies. Old habits, she said. He didn't argue. Understood that dignity meant different things to different people. That for someone like Amara, being useful was oxygen. Being needed was prayer. Being seen was miracle enough. The other executives didn't know what to make of her. The cleaning woman turned assistant, the woman who called him Richard, not Mr. Harrington, who made him eat lunch, who scheduled meetings with mandatory breaks, who answered phones with Richard Harrington's office. How may I help you? In a voice that suggested she actually wanted to help. 6 months later, Amara started night classes, pre-med prerequisites. Richard adjusted her hours without being asked, made sure she had time to study. Hired tutors when she struggled with organic chemistry. Celebrated when she aced anatomy. The office became her study space. Medical textbooks mixed with financial reports. The skeleton model she used for studying stood in the corner like a cheerful reminder of mortality. Her mother visited once. Delia Johnson, 60 years old, wearing her Sunday best on a Tuesday, looked around the office with suspicion. "This some kind of game to you?" she asked Richard directly. "My baby's been through enough. Don't need some rich man's guilt making it worse." Richard respected the directness, the protection, the maternal fierceness that grief hadn't dimmed. "No game," he assured her. "Your daughter saved my life. Least I can do is help her save others." Delia studied him for a long moment, saw something that satisfied her. "Well then, you make sure she eats. Girl studies so hard she forgets food exists." It was acceptance, blessing, permission to be part of their careful family. The foundation launched on Tommy's birthday. Would have been his 10th. The Safe Waters Initiative, Police Reform Project, the Marcus and Tommy Memorial Scholarship Fund. Amara ran it all with the same precision she'd once used to clean. Every dollar tracked, every program monitored, every life saved counted, because that's what mattered, not the money, the lives. 1 year after that first midnight meeting, they stood in the office at dawn, watching the sun rise, a ritual now. "I dreamed about them last night," Richard said. Tommy and Marcus. They were playing together, building something with blocks. Couldn't see what. Amara smiled. "I have that dream too. They're always building, always laughing, always too busy to talk to us." "Maybe that's the point," Richard said. "They're okay, they're together. They don't need us to suffer for them anymore." It was the first time he'd voiced the thought. That maybe grief could evolve. That maybe honoring the dead meant living fully. That maybe Tommy would be appalled at what his father had become in his name. Amara nodded. "Marcus told me once, before everything, that he wanted to matter, to make a difference, to leave the world better." She gestured at the foundation paperwork covering the desk. 20 kids alive because of swimming lessons. 3 families who got justice for police violence. 15 future doctors who couldn't afford school. He's making a difference. Through us. Richard felt the truth of it settle in his bones. This was resurrection. Not bringing back the dead, but making their dreams live. Not replacing what was lost, but honoring it through action. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything. For showing up that first night, for refusing to let me disappear, for the food and the humming and the stubborn faith that broken doesn't mean finished." "Thank you," she replied, "for seeing me as more than a cleaning woman, for believing I could be a doctor, for proving that sometimes the impossible happens." They stood together, CEO and future physician, bound by loss and lifted by purpose. The sun painted everything gold. The city woke below them. Another day, another chance to build what the dead had dreamed. The sign still hung on the wall, but someone had added to it, in careful handwriting, $1 million to anyone who can make me feel again. Payment rendered in full. Services ongoing. With gratitude, RH. Below it, in different writing, invoice. One human heart, slightly used but fully functional. No charge. Pay it forward. AJ. And they did, day by day, meal by meal, life by life. Two people who'd lost everything found something new in the ruins. Not replacement, not forgetting, but purpose. The knowledge that love persists past death, that healing happens in community, that sometimes salvation comes at midnight, wearing a cleaning uniform and humming hymns. That grace is often disguised as the ordinary, that miracles look like showing up, like refusing to quit, like believing that broken hearts can still beat, still love, still save others from drowning. In the end, the $1 million meant nothing. The healing meant everything, and it continued. One sunrise at a time, one shared story at a time, one life saved at a time. Tommy and Marcus, forever young, forever loved, living on in every child who learned to swim, every family who got justice, every dream that refused to die. This was resurrection. This was redemption. This was what love looked like after loss. Not perfect, not painless, but persistent as sunrise, stubborn as hope, real as the two people standing in the golden light, planning another day of impossible things.